Is Ferrari really in crisis in 2025, or are you simply living a difficult transition? The Miami GP has been difficult for Ferrari. In this video, I will show you how a series of technical decisions are taking Ferrari to a crossroads that could define its next decade in Formula One. The Miami Grand Prix was not only a low point for Ferrari in terms of results, it was the most cruel mirror that has faced the team so far this season. What in Australia could be justified as a bad execution in mixed conditions, in Miami it became a total exposure of the structural deficiencies of the SF25. The classification was an advance of the disaster. Lewis Hamilton was eliminated in Q2, something that would have been unthinkable a few months ago considering the prestige of his signing and the performance of Ferrari. Charles Leclerc, on the other hand, barely managed to classify 8th, being surpassed by both Williams pilots, a situation that caused alarm both in Maranello and international media. The Italian press soon described the result as a new minimum in the recent history of the team, reflecting the generalized bewilderment. The technical analysis of the SF25 after that session confirmed the worst suspicions. The car configuration simply did not work in the urban layout of Miami. Low-speed curves, which demand braking stability, precise traction at the output and good management of the balancing in the pianos, showed the fragility of car design. Ferrari not only had no rhythm to compete with McLaren, Mercedes or Red Bull, but was in the painful position of fighting to survive in the middle of the table. The SF25 operational window was so limited that, even with intensive configuration changes during previous sessions, they failed to find a tuning that made the car competitive. In modern Formula One, that is synonymous with crisis. During Sunday's race, the impotence was palpable. Hamilton, caught in dense traffic and without sufficient tip speed to execute overtaking, could barely climb some positions. The British publicly admitted after the race that only arrived at Q3 had already become a complicated task, a statement that rumbled strongly because of the symbolic weight that a pilot like him has. For his part, Leclerc lived an even more frustrating day. Despite a clean driving and without obvious errors, its rhythm was simply insufficient to challenge leaders or even fight for the podium. His 7th final position was the maximum he could rescue on a day in which Ferrari was a spectator of an absolute domain of McLaren. Oscar Piastri's victory, escorted by Lando Norris, scored a brutal contrast. McLaren not only has the best car, but has perfected its strategy and runs with surgical precision. Ferrari, on the other hand, seemed disoriented, caught in a spiral where each technical adjustment seems to worsen the general performance of the car. Fred Vasseur's words after the classification did not leave margin for the interpretation. We are paying the price of a car that has a very difficult balance to find. Any deviation in the setting costs us tenths, and on this grille, that is unacceptable. In addition to the technical problem, confidence within the team has visibly eroded. The pilots, who started the season with an optimistic and collaborative attitude, have begun to show signs of tension. Leclerc was especially hurt by declaring that he made one of his best laps of the season and was still surpassed by the Williams. The message was clear: when your best effort is only enough for P8, the problem is no longer from the pilot but of the car. That statement directly hits the Ferrari technical department, which was already under pressure after the 2024 failures with the SF24. And if something was missing to complete the landscape of uncertainty, it was the accumulated frustration of fans. Miami was a direct blow to the morals of Tifosi. Seeing a team with the prestige and the story of Ferrari being overcome by rivals that 2 years ago were in crisis is a bitter drink. The Italian team has faced its old ghosts again: an unpredictable car, doubtful strategic decisions, and a technical management that fails to transform the potential into tangible results. The great unknown now is whether the promised updates for Icola will have the desired effect. The margin of error has been exhausted. The SF25 cannot afford more weekends like that of Miami. If Ferrari wants to prevent this season from becoming another historical disappointment, he needs to find a radical solution, and he needs it now. Hamilton, in his first real contact with the car, tried to adapt quickly. The British knew that he should modify his driving style to squeeze the strengths of the SF25. During the long batches, he began to imitate the Leclerc approach in the braking and curve entrance, releasing the accelerator before and allowing faster minimal speed in slow curves. It was a fine, technical, but fundamental adjustment. However, he admitted that he underestimated the adaptation process. He thought that with his experience it would be enough to dominate the car in a few laps, but soon realized that learning was going to be longer and that the SF25 required a delicacy that had not experienced since its early years in F1. The duo between Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc promised to be one of the most powerful and explosive of the entire grille for the 2025 season. On paper, Ferrari had one of the most complete alignments of the championship. The experience, consistency and palm tree of a 7-time world champion, combined with pure speed, aggressiveness and hunger of success of a pilot considered by many as the fastest. However, 3 major awards after the start of the championship, the synergy between them has not yet materialized at all. The Ferrari-Hamilton-Leclerc alliance seems to be sailing in a fog of unfulfilled expectations, technical discomforts and internal pressure that does not take respite. On the track, the driving styles of both pilots are beginning to approach by pure need. Hamilton, aware that the SF25 does not tolerate an aggressive piloting in the Mercedes style of previous seasons, has begun to emulate some of Leclerc's characteristic techniques, especially in long and progressive braking. This adaptation has been fast, but also painful for the British, who came to confess in Australia who thought that his integration process would be shorter. Lewis had opted for Ferrari not only for a new challenge, but for the promise of a short-term competitive project. However, the harsh reality of the car has forced him to rediscover his way of driving from scratch. The time he thought of improving tenths for return has had to invest in learning not to lose them. Leclerc, on the other hand, is dealing with a silent but constant pressure. Although he already knows Ferrari's ups and downs, this year he faces a different challenge, sharing a team with a living legend of the F1. Monegasco has made clear in interviews that Hamilton's arrival has been positive in terms of demand and internal work, but at the same time he cannot hide a certain tension in his body language when the results do not accompany. The touch between the two in the first curve of the China GP, which caused damage to the front wing of Leclerc, is an early sign that communication and synchronization between them are still in the setting phase. Leclerc decided not to change the damaged wing, sacrificing step by curve in exchange for speed in line, a risky decision that ended up conditioning his entire career. That play, later analyzed by many experts, reflects an emotional state of urgency, the desire to rescue something in the middle of chaos. The contrasts between the two pilots also extend to the internal plane. While Hamilton tries to influence the technical development of the car with his methodical style and his structured feedback capacity, Leclerc usually moves more by track sensations and direct communication with his engineer. This difference in the way of working has enriched the team, but has also generated certain mismatches in the approaches taken on race weekends. In a category where decisions must be made with millimetric precision, the lack of a unified criterion within the box can be the largest weak point of a team that is already limited by its machinery. Outside the track, the media pressure does not help. Ferrari is not a team that allows to build. In Maranello, each race is lived as a final. Comparisons between both pilots are constant, and any minimum difference in classification or career rhythm is dissected to the extreme. This climate not only complicates coexistence, but it accelerates emotional wear processes. And although until now there have been no visible friction, the tension floats in the air. Hamilton knows that his time is limited. Leclerc feels that his window to become champion with Ferrari is closing quickly. At the strategic level, team errors have also affected the dynamics between them. In Australia, Hamilton was the victim of a late decision of the wall to change rain tires, while Leclerc achieved a somewhat more successful strategy. In China, orders from the box were clearer, but they did not prevent both pilots from having to deal with a car with erratic behavior. The lack of reliability in the tactical decisions of the team complicates any attempt to build trust between the pilots and their engineers. At the moment, Ferrari needs unity more than ever, but has not yet found the formula to align the talent of its pilots with the decisions of the wall and the technical preparation of the car. Both know that the success of this stage does not depend only on their hands, but on a structure that must evolve at the same rate as them. The talent is there, the desire too. But as long as the car does not give them the necessary tools to fight consistently for podiums and victories, this duo runs the risk of being remembered more so it could have been than for what it really achieved. Ferrari is not in a total catastrophe position. With McLaren in front but not unbeatable, and Red Bull and Mercedes still showing strategic or technical inconsistencies in different paths, the championship is still open. But there is no margin of error. The next two Imola and Monaco races will be crucial to mark the trend of the year. Imola also has a special emotional and symbolic load for Ferrari. Running at home before your Tifosis in the midst of a media storm can mean two things: an opportunity for redemption or definitive emotional sinking. The team has promised to carry a substantial update package to the GP of Emilia-Romagna. If these improvements do not immediately translate into a real gain of rhythm and consistency, the narrative of the season could be sealed before the summer. The key to reverse the situation is on several simultaneous fronts. Technical, Ferrari must expand the SF25 operational window. Today the car depends too much on very specific conditions to perform, and that is unfeasible in a calendar that includes paths as disparate as Monaco, Canada, or Baku. Engineers have to find an aerodynamic solution that gives the car stability without compromising their speed in line, especially in urban circuits where balance is vital. This is likely to imply even reviewing structural concepts of the chassis or the flat background, something that is not solved with mere reviews on the rear wing. Strategic, Ferrari's wall needs to recover the confidence of its pilots. So far, key decisions during race have been erratic or late, which has contributed to the loss of positions and, worse, to emotional disconnection between the box and the steering wheel. Hamilton and Leclerc not only need a faster car, they need to believe that those behind monitors know how to make decisions under pressure. This is only achieved with clearer communication, more solid processes, and impeccable career management, something that other teams such as McLaren have executed with great precision since 2024. And then there is the human component. Ferrari must take care of the relationship between his two stars. In these moments of competitive tension, where both feel that they are wasting their talent, it is essential to avoid an internal fracture that can lead to open conflicts. Ferrari's story is plagued by great alignments that self-destroyed for egos, struggles, or mismanagement of leadership. This time they cannot afford to repeat that error. The team's address has to establish clear priorities, define strategic roles, and manage the relationship between Lewis and Charles with emotional intelligence and long-term vision. Ultimately, saving the season does not necessarily mean winning the championship, but consolidating an ascending trajectory. A team is measured both by how it wins and how it reacts when everything goes wrong. If Ferrari manages to convert this crisis into a real learning and restructuring platform, it can still close the year as a respected force, with partial victories, strategic podiums, and a clear vision of the future.